the word speaks for itself, right? Volatility is what we're seeing right now. We've seen it over the past month. Even beyond that, we've seen it in the entire year of 2018. So a lot of the questions that we're seeing from clients at this point is what's going on in the market, what's causing all this volatility. My name is Tyler Braun. I'm a financial advisor with the Trinell Financial Group. I help thousands of people with their retirement planning, and that's one of the questions that we've been getting a lot, in particular over the last month. So let's take a look at some of the key factors that we're seeing right now. And the two things I'm going to discuss today are number one, tax tariffs, and number two, interest rates. With regards to tax tariffs, we're going to break that down into two separate columns. Number one's the trade deficit. So when you hear that term trade deficit, what that means is the United States is importing or purchasing from China approximately $500 billion a year in goods. We're selling or exporting back to China approximately $100 billion a year in goods. That's a $400 billion deficit that we have. That $400 billion deficit puts China in a position of power, meaning that they have a surplus that they can use to reinvest in infrastructure. They could buy U.S. corporations. They're using it for their advantage. We want to shrink that. Number two is the theft of technology, right? China has been accused and is known of stealing proprietary technology. So China's a closed economy, which means that we cannot sell directly to their corporations or their people. We have to go through a Chinese entity. So by doing that, we are signing an agreement that they get to see all of our proprietary rights, our technology, all of the parts that we're using to manufacture these different things. And what's happening is they're replicating those cheaper than we can and using them against us. So they're using that to our advantage. So the tax tariffs were put in place to reduce the trade deficit and stop the theft of the proprietary technology that's occurring. How does that impact you? Right? That's what you guys are wondering. How does that tax tariff impact us? So ultimately what a tax tariff is a penalty. So if a 10% tax tariff is in place, that means that that cost of good has gone up by approximately 10% to purchase that product. The corporation has to shoulder that expense, and ultimately, eventually, it gets passed on to you, the end consumer. If you see a cost in something going up by 10%, that typically means that you're buying less of that product, which ultimately hurts the bottom line of the corporation. It hurts sales in the long term. With regards to tax tariffs that we have, as we see these continue to linger out, the volatility is increased because the longer they're there, it's something that the company has to now account for that they weren't accounting for in the first quarter or the second quarter. So they're building into that to their profit margins. The second line that we're going to talk about is interest rates. This is the more recent round of volatility that we've seen. So for the past 8 years, we've seen historically low interest rates. So when an economy is recovering, right? We came out of 2007, 2008, and they want to spark growth. They lower interest rates to make corporations and individuals pay less interest, meaning they have more money that they're able to spend and grow the economy. When the economy is doing well, just like we've seen, unemployment is low and so forth, the Federal Reserve starts to look at it and say, is inflation going to come into the picture in the short term or in the very soon future? And ultimately, when they're worried about inflation, what they're doing is they're increasing interest rates to help slow that inflation. So if you have the same number of goods that are being sold in an economy and you're paying less in interest, that means you have more money coming into the economy to buy those goods. So it drives up the price of those goods, which is an increase in inflation. So in order to curb that, what the Federal Reserve does is they increase interest rates. And by increasing interest rates slowly, that means consumers and corporations pay more interest to the bank and they have less money coming out into the economy, meaning they're not showing as much in profits or they're not purchasing as many goods. So there's a direct impact with interest rates correlated to the volatility that we see, as you may see some earnings calls that they were expecting interest rates to be at A and they ended up being at B. So we're taking this into account with everything that we do. Ultimately, I want this to be an educational video. So I want everything that we're doing here to be strictly educational. If you have specific questions that you'd like me to go over in detail, please let me know. Give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm glad to go over this much more in depth with you, one-on-one. But ultimately, I appreciate your time and thank you.